Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 drama. Sergio Perez has made clear his intentions to win the 2023 Drivers' World Championship, but that may be made even more difficult with Max Verstappen's latest opinion and revelation on their 2023 car. Very much enjoyed your thoughts down below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Firstly, big news here from Williams confirming their season launch date. Not car reveal date specifically. Most teams have revealed their car reveal dates significantly after Williams' date. So they confirmed today it's going to be February the 6th, Monday, February the 6th, where they're going to launch their season. This doesn't necessarily mean launch their car in quite the same way that the other teams are doing. I believe the earliest launch elsewhere is maybe the 11th or maybe the 13th, pretty much a week after this. So at least Williams are going to be first in something this season, unless someone else comes through with an even earlier one, which is unlikely as it stands. But as they confirm here, so, new season around the corner, going to do the season launch exclusively on the website and app or whatever. You'll hear from the F1 driver duo, Albon and Sargent, the supremely talented driver academy, and of course, we will reveal our 2023 livery. So this might be kind of what Red Bull did last year, right? Well, they didn't actually reveal their car. They just revealed what the livery was going to be on the spec car that the FIA had come up with. Whether what they do here is they just give you the 2022 car that they had last season, put the new livery on it, whatever it's going to look like, and there you go. That's probably what's going to happen here, rather than actually revealing what their car looks like. And a lot of teams will try and keep some things like that secret until they actually bring their car to Bahrain for the pre-season testing a week or so out from the start of the season. That's probably what's happening there. But yeah, a season launch date, not necessarily a car launch or car reveal like the other teams are saying. So, we might not get as much from Williams as we will elsewhere, but, as Jordan points out and I just mentioned, at least they'll be first for something or other. Now, a big update actually on what's going to happen next year with regard to how the cars might well be developing going forwards. The key point is, according to this article here from Giuliano De Chesa, that next year, weight will be a less significant component of upgrading a car than, well, aerodynamic development will be. So this means, as a result, there will be less understeer and more degrees of rear wing on the car. So one of the key problems and complaints, and still is for Max Verstappen, we'll see in a second, is that these new generation of cars are rather understeery. You turn into a corner, they don't really want to comply, they're so heavy. But now it means you're going to get more grip from the front tyres, just based on, a couple of different changes to the regulations going into the new year, but also the teams have now had 1 year of the new regulations. They will be down closer to the weight limit, and thus it's more important the aero stuff rather than taking weight out of the car, which was the key thing last season. So even some interesting points here in the article where it basically describes that now they've had a good amount of time to discuss how this car's going to go, these new regulations are going to go, and now is where they'll be able to exploit the full potential of their car, rather than effectively last year was a weight saving exercise for many teams. Now, Ferrari and Red Bull differed apparently on their progress last season. Ferrari tried to take an aero approach to sorting their problems. Red Bull were overweight at the start of the season, and therefore they basically just produced lighter pieces and chucked them on the car. That, apparently it significantly affected the budget cap. And this is an interesting point to mention, because Red Bull themselves said that, again, this coming year, 2023, the budget cap for last year will at some point get called into question, and maybe for Red Bull themselves, because apparently it's been very expensive what they've been up to here, right? Producing all these lighter pieces, whereas Ferrari focused predominantly on the aero side. They said, let's get our performance cheaply by just producing lighter pieces, and therefore extract the similar performance that you might get by upgrading the aero, but doing so more expensively, but also getting free performance. Now, at the end of the season, Red Bull actually decided, we've got to start focusing on 2023. Let's stop this whole very expensive producing lighter pieces exercise and go down the Ferrari route effectively, which might help them for this season. But the argument being that with the cars now further developed, and with most teams going to get down to that 796, I believe it is now, kilogram weight limit the cars have, or minimum weight limit, that will mean that really this season is a test of aero rather than anything else. This 2023 season will be the first real opportunity to evaluate the teams in terms of aerodynamic development of the new F1 cars, because last season there were other factors in play. Red Bull will be very good on the aero side, as will the other teams as well, I'm sure, at least the top teams, but that is a key point of contention to notice. But yes, Red Bull, obviously, they're going to be good. Now, Max Verstappen, will he be champion again for the third year running? Definitely he's odds-on favourite to do exactly that for many different reasons, but he says an interesting quote over the last day or so: a car cannot be fast with understeer, it is impossible. Now, we know that Max Verstappen likes his car to be very loose at the rear ends. He likes to be able to turn the wheel and the car responds in the corners. If the rear end's a bit unstable and has to get corrected, he can correct it. That's his driving style, likes to be very much on the edge. Now, other drivers aren't, nowadays that's predominantly the style that drivers have. Probably the majority of modern drivers prefer the oversteery car compared to an understeery car, but some still like an understeery car. I think even Hamilton has mentioned that in the past. Certainly Fernando Alonso, right? He likes his car to be, certainly won the championships with a car that, he was obviously very fast with, but it was a car that didn't turn so easily. But once it is turned into a corner, the rear end is going to be stable to put the power down. There's different advantages either way. And maybe reading between the lines here is basically, well, Max is saying that he can't be fast with an understeery car. He can be very fast with a car that's a bit oversteery and caters to his tendencies. But we saw the start of last season, he was basically on a level playing field with Perez until the car started to come towards Verstappen, at which point he just absolutely pulled away and put Perez in the dust effectively last season, and we'll see that in a second. So, Verstappen's comments are interesting because there are drivers in the grid and in the past that have achieved great things with an understeery car, but Verstappen reckons the way to go to be as quick as you can is to have a car that caters to his own personal style, and he's basically telling Red Bull, look, make a car that suits me or we are not going to be friends or good friends going forwards. Now, this ties into this story from Checo Perez on his title hopes. Last season, there was, a good couple of weeks where people were talking about, wow, can Perez win the title? Is he going to be able to mix it up with Verstappen? Those questions were quickly and swiftly put to bed. But as he says now, he's very much committed to trying to do this. He probably knows that realistically, Red Bull kind of consider him the number 2 driver. That's not to say that he couldn't feasibly beat Max Verstappen, and obviously we don't know how many more years he's got left in Red Bull. This could be his last one, for all we know, if things continue to go downhill relationship-wise, let's say, as they seem to at the end of last season. But as he goes on to say here, I think it really depends on how comfortable I am at the start. I was doing well, then it slipped away, but I do feel at this time I'm pretty much at my best, saying that he's at the best he's effectively ever been in terms of performance, wants to start next year on a high level. It started well, had some reliability issues in the beginning, of course, Bahrain being an example, but we were in the mix for the championship early on. Going on to say the following, had a couple of bad races put me out of contention, but maybe he believes that wasn't to have happened and had those couple of bad races early on last season, then he could still have been in with a shout over the course of it. The reality is, though, you look at the numbers, it's not looking so pretty for Perez, right? As we say, at the start of the season, excluding Imola, where, all things considered, it was wet, right? Verstappen's great in the wet, this type of stuff. If you look outside of the wet races, between pretty much Bahrain and Azerbaijan, he was on a very similar level. Yes, in Spain, Perez was quite a way off, as he was in Bahrain, but, he beat Verstappen, of course, in Jeddah to pole there. He was very close in Australia and in Miami, and beat him at Monaco and Azerbaijan, of course, won the Monaco Grand Prix as well. But every race after that, up until Italy, and a very similar story after this as well, was a massive gap in his favour. Certainly France, even though in qualifying France, wasn't too bad for Perez. In terms of race pace, he was just miles off that weekend. And there was rumours about the flexi floor at the time, and maybe Perez was using the new one that was slower, but that probably wasn't the case looking back at it now. And it just seems like Perez fell away when the car came towards Max a bit, and you'd expect that the new season would start. Of course, the cars are now lighter, they're less understeery, as we've just seen in the article, and also Red Bull are going to cater the car towards Max. So, to me, there's not too many positive signs to see if you're a Checo Perez fan, because, look, the pace at the end of last season was way off Max Verstappen, and more than likely the benefits that gave Verstappen the advantage over Perez last season will be even more so relatively at the start of this season compared to what it was at the start of last season. But of course, this whole Perez-Verstappen dynamic has just another added element after what happened in Brazil last year with, the words between Perez and Max. And look, we know that they say that it's all been glossed over and the relationship is fantastic and it's all sunshine and rainbows here at Red Bull Racing and there's going to be no problems between our drivers going forward at all. The reality is maybe somewhat different. I'm sure that Perez does feel differently about Max than he did, let's say, at the start of last season, and therefore that will affect some things on track, I think, between them. Now, look, if Perez isn't on the pace of Max, he probably won't be to compete on that level, then frankly, it's probably not going to matter. But there might be circumstances where even if Verstappen is miles ahead and Perez isn't really in the championship fight, there is a world in which Perez is asked by the team, hey, just really, you've got to hold up Hamilton here for these couple of laps to make sure that he doesn't catch up to Max in the championship, and, maybe Perez won't defend so resiliently as he might have done in the past as a result. But of course, the question is, can Perez compete? He's going to need a start of the season like last year. He's going to need a car that suits him, because the reality is that last year's car at the start was favouring towards understeer, which kind of suits Perez's style a bit more than Max's, certainly does so. And when that changed around, the story very quickly changed in Max's favour from kind of Austria and onwards. But also, if the kind of favouritism, as it does seem like there is, understandably probably, towards Verstappen from Red Bull continues, then Perez probably thinks, well, you know what, this might be my last final year with a decent shot here at the World Championship, and, he's never going to get a better chance than being in the Red Bull as he is now. If Red Bull go for a different driver, he's not going to get another shot to win a world championship. So now I guess is his chance, and he's probably going to go all out to try and do it, despite what the team might say there behind the scenes. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comments below. Just one quick note actually, because we discussed yesterday that there's going to be a new F1 race director. Apparently though, Niels Vitic is going to stay as F1 race director, but there's going to be another one replacing Freitas. So yeah, apparently Mohammed Ben Sulayem wants 2 race directors now, no longer 1. He reckons that 1 race director can't cut it, but I guess he's never heard of Charlie Whiting. But still, that's the update on that. Vitic will stay, someone else is going to join him. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.